This is the Expanding Boundaries podcast.
Do you feel trapped? Stuck in a world of mediocrity, constrained by bad habits, limiting beliefs, and feeling unfulfilled? Do you feel that deep down you know you were destined for much more? In Expanding Boundaries, you'll discover how you can break free and step into your real life, a life without limits. And now, here's your host, Michael McLeish.
Welcome to the first episode of the Expanding Boundaries podcast. I'm really excited and super nervous to get this thing rolling, but we're going to do progress, not perfection. And let's go ahead and kick this thing off. So I have an interview today. I'm really excited to bring this gentleman on, my friend, Jonathan Rivera. He has been a friend of mine for the last, I think, 3 years. We are in the same mastermind and we met there, and he's just been a big help and even a mentor for me in many, many ways. And he is probably the number one reason I've got this podcast rolling. So I'll give you a little bit more background on Jonathan here. He is the self-proclaimed results leader. And he tells me that his teachers told him that he'd never amount to anything. And he went from a straight D student who couldn't graduate high school to now a businessman living an extraordinary life on purpose. He is a CEO of 4 businesses, including a real estate business, a media company, an e-com store, and the podcast factory, which is producing this show here as we speak. He's got over 4 million downloads, and help me out here, Jonathan. It says 89 experts launching their podcast. Does this mean it's 90?
Yeah, you know what? If we add you to the mix, it will be now 90, and hopefully we'll keep on adding people.
All right, great. And he's also been on over 1,200 episodes, so he's going to give me the kid gloves here and help me get through this process on our first episode here. So, Jonathan, thank you so much for being on the show today. It's a pleasure to have you.
Dude, this is amazing. We're making history in McLeish world, where it's your first episode and I can hear the little jitters in your voice. And I think, dude, we talk all the time. What are you even nervous about?
It's true. You know, it's a fault that I have of always wanting to be the perfectionist, but that's part of what the show is all about is expanding those boundaries and overcoming those things that have held you back. So again, thanks for helping me with that.
Yeah, man.
So I'm going to start off with just a little bit of an icebreaker question here, and this is in alignment with what we talked about. We always talk about travel together. So what would you say is the best trip that you've ever taken?
The best trip I've ever taken. How do I want to answer this as best trip? Because there's been beautiful trips, exciting trips, fun. But I think the best one, if I had to call one the best, it would have been the first time that we stayed in Park City, Utah for a month and just went snowboarding all month long, me, Cupcake, and Huddy. And just being able to do that and have that, as Tim Ferriss calls it, that's like a mini retirement. It was a pretty amazing experience.
That's amazing. So you said that was the first time you did that. So you've repeated this trip a few times?
We did it a couple times, and man, I hate to have to admit this to anyone, especially on the air, but we were free before it was trendy to be free because we had this business online. And so we were location independent. And yeah, we did that for several years, and we would do a month at the beach and a month in the snow. And we did that for 3 or 4 years. The last snow trip was like 5 or 6 weeks. It was amazing. But then we put the kid in school, and now school runs my life, and I'm no longer a free man.
All right. Well, it's definitely for a higher purpose. I am sure of that.
Keep telling me, Mike. Keep telling me that. So maybe I'll believe it.
Absolutely. Well, we're still in public school here, and you're homeschooling. Is that right?
No, he goes to school. He goes to school 3 days a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, from 7:30 to 3:30.
Okay. Well, you had mentioned to me, just shifting into, I guess, how we got into that lifestyle. You mentioned to me that you had a real estate business. And one of the themes that I wanted to riff on today, the big idea is just overcoming what we would consider, or somebody from the outside might consider, a big failure. Everybody's afraid of starting a business or making changes in their business because of this scary word called failure. What does failure, I guess, in the big sense, what does that mean to you?
I mean, we're kind of, you and I and the people we hang out with are oddballs in where I think that we all look at failure as progress. That's not quite what we're taught in school. You get an F, and that means you got to stop and redo everything. And in real life, living in the real world, failure means, oh, you missed, so you gotta recalibrate, re-engineer. And that's one of the things that I know is tough for you, because you come from the engineering background where you want everything to be solid, laid plan, know everything's going to happen and not happen. And realistically, the world doesn't work that way. Failure is just feedback. And if you take it as feedback, then it delivers progress to your life.
I love that. Yeah. Failure is feedback. I think that's a really good phrase right there. And a good reminder for anybody listening here, just if you're failing in something right now, just take it as feedback and make some adjustments. Now, let's extend that into your experience. You said you had a real estate business that was failing, which led you down an unexpected path. Can you kind of lay out the framework for that?
Yeah, man. I mean, now I'm thinking about it. Maybe failure is freedom, right? The more you fail, the more free you are. And I mean, I went. You talked about it a little bit, but I didn't graduate high school. I had to go to summer school to get my credits to get out, and I had a blue collar job, like my parents told me. I was an electrician, and I worked in the hot Florida sun, 7 to 3:30, and I did that for 9 years. And I realized, man, I moved up the ranks. I was running jobs, and I had old men working for me, and I was probably making more than them. And I'm thinking, there's nothing left. I got the van, I got the crew, I got the tools. Like, what's left? There was really nothing left for me to do there. And I needed a change. And there were some circumstances that happened that made me really reflect on what I was doing. And I thought, okay, well, real estate's the way out. That's a great equalizer. And I don't know if you've ever watched those late night infomercials, but I saw me some, what was his name? Carlton Sheets. No money down. Buy houses, no money down. And most people would look at that and say, that's a scam. That's a lie. That's BS. And I'm like, hey, I wonder if that would really work. And I went and I bought the thing, and it sat on a shelf for 2 years before I finally did something with it. And when I did, I mean, I bought my first house, just a regular loan. My second house was a lease option using the no money down techniques. And then I started buying more on creative terms that I learned from that book, and acquired quite a bit of real estate. But I didn't know what I was doing. I wasn't that bright. I just hustled and did what I thought was right. And it turned out to be wrong. We were holding a lot of property when the market turned, and we got crushed. We lost everything. I mean, not just investment properties, but I lost my house. Dad lost his. And it wasn't pretty. And I remember specifically around that time thinking, and we've all had the little demons, those little guys saying, see, you weren't supposed to be doing that. See, that'll teach you to try to get out and get free. See, you don't deserve that. And I went through 2 years of this terrible self-talk, nightmare, talking me down off of this. But for some reason, I couldn't get a job, thank goodness. And I had to do something. So I started rebuilding the real estate business. And at the same time, I started looking for a hedge. So if the market went down again, I had another way to make money, because I didn't want my only way to make money to be tied up in real estate. And that's why when you read that bio in the beginning, we got multiple companies, multiple cash flows, multiple ways of making money so that we don't get in that situation again, because it was not pretty.
It's interesting that you say, in terms of the theme of failure is freedom, failure is feedback. You couldn't get a job. And I bet for a while there, that felt like a big failure. And you're like, what am I going to do?
It wasn't, I mean, I didn't go like applying for a job. I just knew that I wasn't cut out for job life anymore. So I
Okay.
did whatever I had to do. I started doing trade work and tile and carpentry and taking side jobs, trying to figure out how do I rebuild this thing. And it took some time, but I mean, it would have been a real failure. There's only one real failure, and that's giving up. And I didn't give up on my dream.
Did you always have that dream, or did that evolve in this process?
You know how this works, man. Whatever your dream is today, it better not be that 2, 3, 5 years from now, because then that means you're not growing. And so, yeah, the dream has evolved, but there's been this narrative that I've been telling myself about freedom, about being free, about being location independent, about living a life that others can't live. And so that narrative has remained the same. How I get there, that changes from time to time. Like it used to be that we stayed a month in the snow and a month at the beach. This summer, since the kid is in school, we just rented a place for 3 months and went back and forth because it was an hour away from our place. It's still the dream of freedom, the dream of location independence. How I get it might be a little bit different than the way it used to be, but I'm still moving in that direction.
All right, perfect. Well, I'd like to revisit what you said. You had that demon or the little devil sitting on your shoulder telling you don't deserve this. This is not good. And that kind of limiting self-talk. Tell me more about what you did. I know you took some actions in terms of looking for a hedge and diversifying into multiple types of businesses, or at least having a plan to do so initially. How did you overcome that limiting self-talk?
Bro, that thing never goes away. That little new levels, new devils, as they say. No, it's the same old devil talking that same old nonsense every time you move in a different direction. And that was the first time I had to deal with it. I left my job as an electrician. I jumped into real estate, did this thing, and then everything blew to pieces. And so that was the first time he introduced himself to me. And he was not a friendly guy. He just stayed there bothering me and telling me how bad I was. And that's why it took me so long to get out of that. That I remember it was about 2 years where I started figuring things out. And of course, all the work I had put in over those 2 years of rebuilding the real estate business, trying to build this second business that was diversifying my income and things finally settling down. It took me a long time, but I can tell you right now, Mike, I'm doing better than I have ever done before in my life because I mean, I think that's our purpose. We're supposed to be growing, getting better. We're going to have setbacks and we're going to dust ourselves off and pick ourselves up. I mean, you and I have been through this a million times. The thing that's different today is I am more aware of that little bastard and I have different tools to deal with him. And I recognize him though. When I see him, I know he's here, and I start saying, "Okay, well, take a step back. Whoa, what are we doing?" Obviously, something doesn't take me 2 years, but it might take me 2 weeks now. But he still comes back. He still nags me. I have better tools of dealing with him, but I don't know that ever goes away.
Okay. Well, I love that answer. And I think that's an honest answer, because a lot of people say, I have the thing, just do this one thing and that will solve this problem. But
I
it's a
don't think so.
lifelong journey, right?
You know what? I don't think there's one thing. I think you're developing new things because he gets immune to different things.
Hmm.
As you get better, he's trying to like outwit, and surprise you and get you from a different angle. But the thing is to have the awareness to see that whatever it is, that roadblock, and then to start dealing with it. However you do that.
You mentioned several different tools that you use and incorporate. Is there, I'd love to give some tactical advice to the listener here. Is there any one particular tool that you can share that might help somebody that's wrestling with a similar demon?
Oh man, there are a few, and I will start with what seems like the most obvious, but I don't think most people have, and that's the right environment. So pick up the phone and call a friend, and it can't be a friend that is an AOP, average ordinary person doing average ordinary things with average ordinary problems. They won't understand that. It's got to be other achievers. And so getting in the right environment like us, where we met in a very elite environment. It's a small group. People pay good money to be there. And if you're in that room, you earned your spot. And that's one of the things that we have to tell ourselves sometimes when we start getting that imposter syndrome. Hey, I'm in this room with this guy too. Right? So I earned my spot here. I got invited here. I'm paying for this spot. But getting in the right environment, if there was one quick tip, that's the one and it's got to be other achievers. It's got to be people doing things, because here's what you're going to figure out. Most people are living quiet lives of desperation. They're just trying to that's why you hear people talking about, thank God it's Friday. Like, so what? It's Friday. Now you're off work. Now you get to do all your domestic work. Friday means nothing, pal. Let's be realistic. You know what I text my friends, Mike? Thank God it's Monday. I get to get back to work. That's what I was texting. Thank God it's Monday. Let's get back to work. But getting around high achievers, they lift you up. We lift each other up. Yeah, you can do that. Why couldn't you do that? Why can't you have that? Why can't you have that awesome camper truck tank thing that goes anywhere and go take your family and have adventures? Why can't you? The right environment, that's what they're going to say. If you're hanging with the wrong people, they're going to be like, why do you think you can do that? They're going to be like that little demon holding you back. So number one, Mike, right environment, right people, achievers. And if you can't get it through the way that we've gotten it, through paying for it, then listen to podcasts like this one. Then go ahead and buy some books and biographies and go take some courses. Like, start wherever you can, but get your mind around better thinking. That's number one. Number two, another tactical tool. And I'm going to admit that I haven't used this in maybe the last year. I've changed this, but for many, many, many years, I practiced meditation. And a good meditation practice, there's this book that got me started. I think it was called like 8-minute meditation, 7 or 8-minute meditation. I don't know. Look it up on Amazon. And it takes you through each week a different type of meditation. So you get a sampling of meditations and you can see what works for you. I got on that book. I started meditating, and I meditated for, I don't know, maybe 7, 8 years, maybe longer. I don't even remember how long I started meditating, but that practice is invaluable. And my most recent form of meditation was TM meditation, where you go twice a day and you do 20 minutes at a time. And I found that to be profound. And I did that a couple years ago. The only reason I'm not doing that now is because I decided to replace that with prayer. And so now my morning time is spent, the time I would have been meditating, I spend in a rosary. And I feel like for me, it matches who I am a little bit better, because I get to be proactive. Because in meditation, you learn to be present. You learn to let the thoughts fly by and be centered in that moment. And I think that comes in handy, and everybody can use that. In prayer, I feel like I'm getting, now that I have the practice of meditation, I get to focus on thanking God and asking for answers. And so it feels a little more proactive for where I am. But I don't know that that's going to be the case forever. That's just where I'm at right now. So I think the environment, meditation, and if you're a person of faith, some prayer, I think those are good tools to help you, because I've gotten so many answers sitting on this couch behind me, either in meditation or prayer.
I love that. And I honestly, just circling back to the first one, you were a big part or a big help in my life. You know, when I said, JR, I'm having challenges here mentally, you know, some of the struggles I've been through. And you sent me a book a while back called The Gap and the Gain. And again, that was just what I needed. So again, reaching out to somebody that has that right mindset, that can put you in that right environment, is key. And I'll second, you know, what your thoughts are on the meditation and prayer. I'm actually in a season of both, you know, where I will meditate and actually transition to prayer, or I'll start with prayer and go to meditation. But I think that's really important, because for me, especially with my mind always just going like a crazy monkey or you know, just squirrel, you know, you're just constantly chasing these thoughts. Meditation really helps you to learn to train yourself to just sit and be, and to empty myself out isn't really the right words, but be present, I think, like you said, is the thing, and just get a little bit of clarity, let that dust settle. Then I think your prayer can be more effective, and you can go into, here's what I'm thankful for, here's what I'm grateful for, and here's, you know, where I'm struggling and asking for help. So I wholeheartedly agree with those recommendations.
I think you just hit another one that we ought to just put in here asking for help. I think that's something that, hey, we're alpha males and we got big ego and we beat your chest, right? And that's one of the great things about the environment that I feel that we're in right now in our mastermind is it's not so much about beating chest as it is about giving each other a hand up. And that's what I like. And that's also goes back to having the right people around you. You can't ask for help from people that can't help themselves.
That's right. There's so many masterminds out there that are all about, who's who's the king dingling, right? That's right. And there's a lot of people on social media that you would think, okay, this guy doesn't need any help. He's self-made, right? But really, most people that are high achievers, I mean, they didn't do anything alone. They asked for help, they got help, they accepted help, and that's what got them there.
Absolutely.
Love that. All right. I guess one of the questions I wanted to ask you, and I think this is a great question for anybody that has some high level of success like you have. And I know you might say, I'm just getting started. I know I do. But
Yeah.
if you could pull yourself aside and maybe go back to your 20-year-old self, what would be the most meaningful advice that you would give him right now?
That's why I threw that in there because I've been thinking about that every time I talk to somebody, even with my son, I'm thinking about that. And it's really, really, it comes down to relationship capital, getting around the right people. Like you and I have a friendship that is more than just a mastermind. Like we actually help each other out, like you said, are able to talk and we're both going somewhere, even if we hit the pits. Like we're gonna hit the pits. There's no way around it. But having the right environment would be at the very top of the list, and it goes further than having the people that you can call for help, not just for help, but also look at for inspiration. And I don't want our listeners to be confused what I'm saying here. I'm not saying to have people around that you compare yourself to, because the only person you need to be comparing yourself to, like the gap in the gain, is who you are today and where you came from. So you just got to compare yourself to who you were. So it's not a comparison thing, but it's an inspiration thing. People who are doing big things, people who are living a certain way, people who you want to live like, those are the people you want to surround yourselves with. I think a lot of us, I mean, we're lucky because I feel like we're in such a good environment. A lot of people don't have that. And a lot of people just stay around the people they went to school with and the people they work with. And none of those people are trying to do anything but get by. And so you have to actively seek better relationships. And that inspires you. But there's another piece to it. And this is one of the things I learned by joining masterminds and also joining masterminds that I could barely afford. Like I got into my first big one and I could barely, like it was a struggle to pay to be in that room. And it was scary to make that investment. And one of the biggest things I learned in that first one was that I didn't know anything. I didn't even know the questions to ask. I knew nothing. And so going in there and learning from these people, what they're thinking, what questions they have, the way they view the world, and absorbing that into myself so that I could get better. That was huge. What questions can I ask? I'm probably focusing on the wrong thing, and being around those right people gives you the inspiration, gives you the thinking to ask better questions, and lets you know what's possible. So I would say that, and then the last piece that actually ties all this together, it's the glue that bonds it, is be humble. You got to be humble because you're not going to get into these rooms. You're not going to get the mentorship that you're looking for. You're not going to get the answers if you go in there knowing everything. So like you said, I think what we're thinking about is beginner's mind, like empty that cup so something new can fill it, right? Is that be humble, be open, be curious, and get involved.
That's perfect. Thank you. That is some good advice for sure. I needed you about 20 years ago to tell me those things.
Oh, dude, I needed you too.
All right. Well, I'm going to wrap up with something kind of fun. I like to keep this podcast a little bit into the physical travel, in that expanding boundaries mindset of physically going somewhere. We talked about, doing the beach, doing the snow, and I could ask you more about that. But if you go on a trip to maybe even a newer place outside of your clothing and toiletries and I guess snowboards, what's one thing you would never leave home without when you're traveling?
My family.
Your family.
If I'm traveling for fun and for adventure and to make memories, yeah, my family and
Okay.
a camera. Because if we don't record it, it didn't happen, right?
That's right. Okay. And something that Kim and I, my wife and I, like to do when we travel is try, the local cuisine, something new and exotic, especially when you travel overseas. There's always some interesting things you can find, but even within the United States and local communities, you can find something interesting and fun. So what would you say is like the most exotic food that you've ever ate?
Oh man, exotic. I ate fish eyes once. That was interesting. Yeah, squid ink. I've eaten squid ink
Ooh.
before. In the Philippines, I think I've never heard. Well, I think that was delicacy over there. I didn't like it, but I'm a meat and potatoes kind of guy.
Yeah, absolutely. I was like, you ate squid ink on purpose.
Oh,
That's interesting.
yeah, it was weird.
I love it. All right. Well, I think that is just about it for today. We're running out of time and I want to be respectful of yours. Jonathan, how can our guests find you or connect with you?
Hey, since we're on a podcast, I'll recommend that you look up resultsleader.fm. Results Leader is my podcast where I talk to the men and women who are getting results for their clients. And I think that's an easy thing for you guys to look up.
Okay, perfect. Well, Jonathan, thank you a million times for being on the show today, helping me cut my teeth on this first episode here and helping me launch the show. I'm in your debt for sure. And thank you for being on today. I hope our guests got a lot out of this interview.
Congratulations, man. I'm stoked to be a part of your personal legend. Let's go.
All right, let's go. So I will wrap this up with a couple of things here for those of you listening. Just think about, one big idea or one takeaway that you got from today's show. And don't just think about it though. Once you've got that in your mind, take some kind of action, whether it be big or small. Maybe expand your network. Try to find somebody who's achieving that or that you would want to know. Reach out to them. I think what Jonathan just talked about is it does take a little bit of active effort. If you sit there and wait for it to happen, it probably won't. It's your life and you are your biggest advocate. So go out, take some action, big or small, and work on expanding your boundaries. I have 3 quick little asks for anybody listening, since we're just getting started, especially if you got some value out of this episode or the show, just share it with at least one friend or somebody, a colleague, anybody that you know, and share it on social media if you feel so inclined. Speaking of which, you can find me on social media at Michael McLeish Official on Facebook and Instagram. Reach out. I'll do my best to answer any questions that you have right away. So that's it for today. Thanks for listening, and we'll hope to see you on the next episode.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.